Tyson Fury held this press conference yesterday. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of the clips from it by now, but the point of this press conference was ostensibly to build up interest in the fight with Oleksandr Usyk. What it was in reality was an enormous 30-minute long exercise in ego massaging, as if this guy's ego wasn't already big enough, by the way. But that's literally the point of this press conference. But here's the thing. What really annoyed me about this wasn't the ego massaging of Tyson Fury. It was the fact that the boxing media, the independent boxing media, the media that you and I rely on to get our boxing coverage, they let us down completely here. And what I'm talking about is the fact that this press conference featured zero, and I do mean zero, questioning of any of the statements that Tyson Fury or his team made. And that defeats, from my perspective, the entire point of holding these press conferences. But my thing with this is the boxing media, all of these independent media outlets, supposedly independent media outlets, supposedly independent journalists, they're letting us as boxing fans down. Because when Tyson Fury is up there at the press conference saying a list of cruiserweights, which, by the way, he was cherry-picking bad examples as well, because he was talking about David Haye, he was talking about Steve Cunningham, who Tyson Fury beat, he was talking about Thomas Adamek, who, with all respect, was never a great cruiserweight, even close to the same level as Oleksandr Usyk was, but he's cherry-picking these little examples, and he's out here saying that, essentially, Oleksandr Usyk is coming up to heavyweight, and he's going to lose just like all of these other guys did. Okay, great. Makes sense. Well, no, actually, it makes no sense whatsoever. Why? Because Oleksandr Usyk has been established at heavyweight for multiple years now, and he holds not one, but two victories, and two dominant victories over Anthony Joshua, the man who Tyson Fury, by the way, has been running away from for years. Nobody says anything. Nobody says, oh, hang on a minute, Tyson. Hang on just a minute. Maybe Oleksandr Usyk isn't going to be as hopeless at heavyweight as those other guys you mentioned, because he's actually beat the Olympic gold medalist Anthony Joshua twice. Here's the thing. Nobody questions the fact that Anthony Joshua just put on a dominant performance over Francis Ngannou. Tyson Fury arguably lost the fight. In my opinion, he did lose the fight. In your guys' opinion, I'm sure several of you guys, a lot of you guys probably feel that he lost the fight. So a lot of people feel that it was at least close, and some feel that Ngannou won the fight. Oh, that was fine. Nobody questions that. Nobody says anything. Nobody brings up the fact that AJ just beat the guy easily who you struggled with and arguably lost to. Nobody says anything. Okay. Tyson Fury comes out here and he says, I don't want anybody to challenge Oleksandr Usyk's credentials. I don't want anybody to say that Oleksandr Usyk is a bad fighter. No, because why? Because when I beat him, which I'm definitely going to, then I don't want people to diminish my accomplishment. God forbid that anybody actually say anything bad about me by basically belittling Usyk after the fight and saying he wasn't that good. See, Tyson says that he beat Vladimir Klitschko, he beat Deontay Wilder, and then subsequently people said, well, Vladimir Klitschko was old, Deontay Wilder lacked technical skills, he wasn't that good, blah, 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 blah. Well, here's the thing. Tyson Fury has spent the last few years, and not just him, but his dad, his whole family, everybody has spent the last few years insulting Oleksandr Usyk, calling him useless. Just watch the last Fury press conference. Watch this Fury press conference, in fact, because that's the thing. He contradicts himself so many times that half of this press conference, he was insulting Usyk as well. And then he says, well, actually, Usyk's a good fighter. Nobody should question it, because when I win, nobody can take the credit away from me. And nobody questions it. Nobody puts up their hand and says, well, actually, Tyson, hang on. You've been running your mouth and insulting Usyk for years, including at the last press conference, and including at this press conference. Don't you think you've actually diminished his credentials quite a bit, to the point where if you beat him, don't you think you've actually taken away some of the credibility from your own victory? Those are all credible questions people could ask. They're all questions that I'm thinking watching this. They're all questions that I'm sure you guys were thinking watching this as well, but nobody says anything. And why don't they do that? Well, first of all, the actual format of the press conferences is very stale. It's very ridiculous. You should actually be having members of the media be allowed to ask questions from the audience. Anthony Joshua, to his credit, who, by the way, I actually favor to beat Tyson Fury at this point, and I have done for years. But anyway, Anthony Joshua, to his credit, has been actually asking the media questions in his press conferences giving them the opportunity to actually ask maybe some of the things that you and I might want to hear. But in this case, that doesn't happen. So that's problem number one. The media is not actually being encouraged to ask questions from the audience. But number two, the media should be demanding that they're asking questions from the audience. You see, because this whole event is being used to drum up interest in the thing. I know boxing channels were sent out email invitations to attend this press conference, supposedly. I know a lot of the different media outlets were asked to be there. Everybody had to make this trek out to the northeast of England and, whatever, show up for this, take time out of their day. So they need the press to actually show up. Otherwise, it would have just been in Tyson Fury's living room with a webcam set up and Frank Warren and Spencer Brown all just sitting around on Tyson Fury's couch, but it wasn't. They need the media to attend. So there's a responsibility on the boxing media to actually demand that they get to ask questions at these events, but they obviously don't. So then you then have the interviews that actually take place outside of the formal press conference setting. And you would think maybe they would be a bit better because interviewers themselves have a little bit more control over the format, maybe if they're not allowed to ask questions in the main press conference itself. Unfortunately, nothing improved by and large in those interviews either. And the reason why is because, unfortunately, and not all of the interviewers, not all of the channels are guilty of this, so I don't want to lump everyone in together. There are good channels, there are good interviewers out there, but unfortunately, too many of these guys are reliant on getting views from their YouTube videos in order to provide an income for themselves. And what that means is they need these press credentials to show up to these events. They need the promoters and the fighters to want to go and let them show up to these press conferences, let them have a free seat at ringside or close to ringside for these events, have them sit in the locker room and throw a camera phone in their face and ask these questions. They're reliant on the goodwill of the promoters and the fighters, and as a result, they don't want to ask questions basically that are too uncomfortable. And the result is you and I, the boxing fans, get let down. And I think that's why increasingly people are turning to independent boxing YouTube channels online to try and get a sense of people actually saying the things that we as boxing fans want to hear. So it's unfortunate that you have the mainstream media outlets and the supposedly independent YouTube media outlets all kind of being lumped together and falling into the same trap of not being able to or being too afraid to actually ask the tough questions. And the reality is this: it's good for them. They get to attend these shows and they get their press pass and whatever. I only care about, do I actually get to hear Tyson Fury or Oleksandr Usyk or Frank Warren or all of these people actually being pushed and actually being asked some of the questions that you and I want to hear. And until that happens, the boxing media is failing in their ability to give us the content that we would actually like to see. And I will say this as well, okay? The reality is a lot of these channels are doing well, but the reality is also a lot of these channels and a lot of these media outlets are not doing as well as they should be because of the fact that fans know, and you know, which ones will ask the tough questions, which ones won't. And that's why you get these situations like we just saw with Tyson Fury, where the guy couldn't even get out of his own way with the bizarre and ridiculous things that he was saying, and nobody was calling him out on it. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one who was watching this and thinking, come on, is anybody going to say anything? Is anybody going to say something? But unfortunately, no one did. So what I want to do, guys, is give you guys the opportunity right now to do something which is going to be helpful to everyone in the comments. In the comments of this video, I want you guys to write down the name of a boxing channel that you watch on YouTube, which you think actually provides good, solid, independent coverage that you actually trust to ask the questions, or at least if they don't attend these press conferences, interview these fighters, do that type of thing, then at least be independent and speak the truth in the videos that they create. Let's list some of those channels in the comments below. Let's shout out the true, independent, and honest voices in the boxing space, because that is what we need more of. That is what's actually going to get a lot more interest going in this sport. Now, again, I want to clarify and say I'm not throwing all of the YouTube boxing media into this space. I'm not throwing all of the interviewers into this space, but unfortunately, a lot of the people and a lot of the channels who attended this press conference did fall into this trap. They didn't do their job. They didn't ask the questions, and boxing is a worse place for it. So that's all I've got to say on this one, guys. Other than that, typical Tyson Fury press conference is a shame. We didn't have anyone from Team Usyk there to counterbalance the drivel coming out of the Gypsy King's mouth at this point, and it is drivel. And Tyson Fury used to be one of my favorite fighters. His press conferences used to be highlights. They've become lowlights. That's all I've got to say on this one, guys. But hit me up in the comments. Suggest some of these channels. Thank you, as always, for watching. I will catch you in the next video.